This is the I Still Believe in Cleveland podcast. I am Ryan Sponseller.
I'm a Midwest guy, back in the Midwest. I'm just welcoming it, just trying to stay an open mind, keep learning, and but really trying to be aggressive and show my true game and show who I am.
That's Sam Dekker, one of the Cavaliers' newest additions, whose relevance to many Cavalier fans will be his time spent at Wisconsin. His team's run to the 2015 NCAA Finals peaked with the Dekker dagger to the undefeated Kentucky Wildcats in the Final Four.
So just sticks it at the appropriate time. We step back, Jack, and
Dekker
yes.
hits the three! Woo! And you talk about big shots, Dekker
Early onions!
But Dekker hasn't made the same splash in the NBA, traded by the Clippers to the Cavs for practically peanuts. ESPN NBA analyst Jordan Schultz even reported a rumor that Dekker had a lack of maturity and focus regarding basketball. What should Cavs fans expect from Sam Dekker? If he can stay healthy, I believe Sam is primed to be a major part of this Cavalier team and prove to be the most improved player in the NBA. But let's take a look into Sam's Midwestern upbringing, his journey through Wisconsin, Houston, and LA to figure out if the Cavs will see the same magic Dekker displayed for the Badgers.
Before I could walk, I had a basketball.
Sam, 3 years old.
I was trying to shoot hoops and dribble a ball.
No, we gotta make one.
Our basement had a little court that had 2 hoops, of course.
Hey.
Battles in the basement all the time.
Sam grew up in Sheboygan, Wisconsin, down the road from Kohler, split between Green Bay and Milwaukee. Sam wore his loyalty to the Packers and Brett Favre, but it was basketball that coursed through his family's veins.
I've had a ball in my hands my whole life, and I think I've just always been in love with it. I would go to the practices, I'd shoot around, and when my dad was coaching, and I'd watch my brother, and I pretty much idolized my brother. I thought he was the greatest person ever.
Sam's dad was the coach of his team at Sheboygan Lutheran, where Sam felt the added pressure of an older brother who set scoring records for their conference. Sam hit a growth spurt and ended up surpassing his brother en route to becoming the Wisconsin Gatorade Player of the Year and Mr. Basketball in Wisconsin. That pressure and success now shined an even brighter light on Sam's actions.
Being in the national spotlight, I've kind of had to grow up pretty quick. I've had to mature at a different rate than a lot of people, and there's times where it's tough for me to be a regular high schooler because everything I do is going to be monitored and looked at, and it's frustrating at times because sometimes you'll be like, I just want to be a kid tonight. I want to go have fun with my friends, but I can't because there's going to be someone watching me, what I'm saying or what I'm doing.
Sam went on to lead his team to a state title, scoring 40 in the championship game with the team's last 12 and a game-winning three-pointer with 2 seconds left on the clock. For any Wisconsinites following Sam's career at this point, it was a match made in heaven to see Sam travel to Madison to play for Bo Ryan's Badgers. It was a steady climb at Wisconsin with an All-Big Ten honorable mention his freshman year and second-team All-Big Ten for his sophomore and junior seasons. Not only did his game become more polished, but so did his look, as reviewed by The Journey from the Big Ten Network and teammate Nigel Hayes.
Shaggy mop of just, it was everywhere. And it was just looked awful when I played. So I went and got the sides and the back buzzed and then kept it long on the top and spiked it up.
He'll spend 10, 15 minutes before a game making sure that, he's got the right amount of, 16 hairs poking up in the right spot for him to go out there and perform well.
Sam certainly has a jovial side, as documented by his desire to become a rapper.
Sam's always wanted to be a rapper. He told me that and I really believe he'd rather be Eminem than, LeBron James if he could pick.
Put that cup up on a coaster. Burn you like a toaster. Hang it up like a poster.
All of these things seem to be in good fun, creating a healthy rapport with teammates, but is this where Sam received the negative tag of immaturity and lack of focus? We'll soon find out if Sam's personality meshes well with Coach Lou and this Cavalier team. There were no complaints in college, especially after Dekker's play in the 2015 NCAA tournament. The top-seeded Badgers were led by Dekker and future 9th overall draft pick Frank Kaminsky. Dekker was an offensive powerhouse in that tournament, scoring 23 in a Sweet 16 win over North Carolina, 27 in a victory over second-seeded Arizona, and 16 against undefeated Kentucky, including that 3 that pushed the Badgers into the lead for good. Wisconsin went on to lose to Duke in that championship game, but Dekker had proven worthy of the NBA and entered the draft to forego his senior season. Looking back at that 2015 NBA draft, it was pretty stacked. Karl Anthony Towns at 1, Buckeye D'Angelo Russell at 2, Kristaps Porzingis at 4. There was value in the middle of the first round with Devin Booker, Kelly Oubre Jr., and Terry Rozier. And later, Larry Nance Jr. went to the Lakers at 27, and Cedi Osman went to the T-Wolves at 31 and was then traded to the Cavs. With the 18th pick, the Houston Rockets selected Sam Dekker. Draft Express described Dekker's offensive game as, quote, one of the most versatile and efficient offensive players in the college game, end quote. And it wasn't just offense, he could hold his own on the defensive end as well. Quote, Dekker is similarly versatile, being capable of guarding bigger players with his size, strength, and toughness, and smaller players thanks to his solid lateral quickness and strong effort level, end quote. One factor that wasn't well documented during the draft process was that Dekker had likely dealt with a back injury during his junior year at Wisconsin, as reported by ESPN insider Jeff Goodman. Sam had surgery on his back in mid-November of his rookie season and did not play for the rest of the year. He came back the following season to play about 18 minutes a game across 77 games played. Sam finally had the chance to show that he belonged in the NBA, especially his athleticism and finishing ability.
Block out by Beverly. Shortest guy on the floor gets the rebound. Dekker! Oh, the punch on Ennis sent him to the court with a knockout blow.
Dekker had a 30-point outing against the Grizzlies on January 21st and ended the season with 15 double-digit scoring games. Things were just starting to gel in Houston when Sam was traded to the Clippers as the key asset in the Chris Paul trade. Expectations were still very high at the start of the season, but once again Sam came to a new team with injury baggage. In April of the previous season, Sam broke his left hand on a hustle play. He was only able to return for 2 underwhelming games in the playoffs, and you wonder if this injury impacted his confidence or his shot the following season. Sam played in 73 games for the Clippers, and the athleticism was still there.
Dekker put in the floor. Oh, slam dunk with the right hand. Oh, the sneaky, athletic Sam Dekker.
But the three-point shooting was way down. After attempting about 2.5 threes a game for the Rockets, Dekker attempted a mere 11 threes in his last 42 games with the Clippers. Things weren't so sunny in LA. Dekker received a chance to revitalize his career in Cleveland through this past summer's trade.
Trades happen, and LA wasn't necessarily the best fit at the time, and Cleveland has embraced me and embraced my game. It's been amazing. The fans have been awesome, and teammates have been great, and I just feel very comfortable. So I'm just trying to go out there and compete and play my game and show there's way more to my game than a lot of people know, and I'm feeling good about myself right now.
Sam has received a good chunk of minutes in preseason play with the Cavs, shooting the ball more, still showing that dynamic athleticism with this ankle breaker against Jason Tatum and the Celtics.
Dekker's just a basketball player. That's the best way to describe him. Larry Nance Jr. just doing a lot of things. Well, look at the handle. And Dekker finished it off. Yes.
Dekker has 1 year left on his contract before he can become a restricted free agent, similar to Rodney Hood's situation last year and this past summer. The opportunity is there. Can Dekker turn his third real season into his best? That's what former Glen Oak guard and current Portland Trailblazer CJ McCollum did in his third season when LaMarcus Aldridge took his 23 points a game to San Antonio. McCollum went from scoring below 7 a game to 20 on his way to winning Most Improved Player for the 2015-16 season. Dekker can also learn from teammate Kevin Love, as Love was the 2010-11 Most Improved Player for the jump he made from his second to third season in the NBA. Independent of your college allegiance, we'd all like to see a few more Dekker daggers and many more highlights from Sam, if that means more wins for the Cavaliers. Browns blogger Eric Saunier joins me again on the podcast. Hey Eric, so things got pretty ugly in this past loss to the Chargers. Chargers actually have the second best record in the AFC with 4 other teams. but a lot of fans have been passing around blame. How did you look at this game, and who would you be hardest on? Offense, defense, special teams, or do you think it was the refs?
I saw this game as an utter disappointment for the Cleveland Browns. To be honest, it reminded me a lot of the 2000s teams where we've seen no life, very little heart shown on the field, no tackling, not being able to catch passes, and just being embarrassed. The defense has got to shoulder most of the blame. I understand Melvin Gordon's a great player, but giving up 132 yards of him on the ground as well as 246 yards in total is inexcusable. This defense is better than that and cannot have this type of performance. Secondly, the offense was very underwhelming. Baker Mayfield did not have a great game. However, the drops by Antonio Callaway and Damian Ratley, as well as Chris Hubbard, allowing defenders to blow right by him, certainly did not help the unit. And finally, the special teams and refs, they both hurt the team, but I don't think there would be enough to pin the loss on. Yeah, that false start on the left tackle was blatantly obvious. I was yelling at my TV screen. But unfortunately, those seems to happen on a weekly basis for the Cleveland Browns, so you might as well expect one or two each game.
Looking ahead, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers have been up and down this season. What should Browns fans expect this Sunday?
Well, since returning from his suspension, Jameis Winston has 5 touchdowns to 4 interceptions along with a pair of fumbles. His inconsistency is on full display, so it's really going to be tough to gauge whether the Browns defense will have their way with him or give up many yards and many passing touchdowns to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. On the ground, Peyton Barber is the team's leading rusher. To be honest, I had to look him up to see who he was. I anticipate the Buccaneers scoring in the lower 20s, but the Browns not giving up too many points, but still not shutting them out.
So at linebacker, we just waived James Burgess because of injury. Looks like Joe Schobert's going to be out. Who steps up, and what should we watch for regarding the Bucs exploiting the linebacker depth?
With these linebacker injuries, Jannard Avery is likely going to shift into the lineup as the starting linebackers. Primarily the Mike linebacker, which should be a difficult position for any rookie to play, but I have confidence in Jannard. He hasn't been terribly impressive over the last couple of weeks, but I know he's made his mark in preseason and has that ability. They've also signed Xavier Woodson Lust off the practice squad. Exactly. I hope he. I've never heard of him as well. Maybe he can surprise somebody, and he's another diamond in the rough found by John Dorsey. I don't expect to see too much from him. Therefore, it's really going to be up to Avery, Kirksey, and Collins to step up and make some plays for this linebacking core.
We know Baker and the wide receivers need to get back on the same page. Who else on the Browns will be due for a big game?
The obvious answer would be to see Nick Chubb get more carries on the ground and Duke Johnson see more touches, whether that's runs or passes come his way. Each should help with the offense as they're extremely fast and have an ability to make defenders miss. Finally, I understand that Jarvis Landry might be doubled. However, I'd like to see an improvement from this last week. It was flat out embarrassing. 2 catches for 11 yards. You cannot be the best receiver on this team and only have an output like that. Again, he's probably going to get a lot of attention. However, he's got to come up with 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 catches for 70, 80 yards at the minimum. We're not playing against the 85 Bears defense here. Come on, guys. Especially with these rules that the offenses have nowadays.
So you're going to be at the game in Tampa. What's going to be your plan if the Browns win this one?
Well, I've been to many away games now. A lot of losses, a couple wins, and the best plan to celebrate a Browns win is to find a local watering hole afterwards, occupied by a lot of Cleveland Browns fans, and simply just be loud and be happy and enjoy the day. My favorite part would be the Saturday nights with the Cleveland Browns backers. This is at a bar where many fans gather and can meet former players. This year's guest of honor is Ernest Biner. Previous players who I've met in the past include Kevin Mack and Hanford Dixon. Another thing I really enjoy is meeting up with Browns fans from around the country, hearing their stories, why they became a Browns fan, as well as why they continue to be a Browns fan. So all those things put together on a Saturday night watching college football, really enjoying yourselves, really get you in the mood for the Sunday afternoon, and hopefully to see a Browns win. In this case, to defeat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to get back to 3-3-1, and get a good solid win, much needed. Go Browns.
Drew Swallen is back on the podcast. He's got a couple bones to pick about this past Chargers game. He's also going to give us his top 5 starts on the Cleveland Browns offense. Drew, take it away.
Before we get into some of our plays, some of what we can expect, we have to get a couple of things out there. The first is we saw, unfortunately, the return of the same old Browns. This is something I thought we had moved past. I honestly did. This is a coaching staff that everybody's been hard on, but rightfully so. And I thought they had finally turned the corner. I know they lost some close games. Oakland, they had no business losing. If they had a kicker, they would have beaten New Orleans. But I didn't look at the coaching staff for the reason behind those losses. And I don't know if you can blame the coaches entirely for what we saw, but that was an ugly game. There's no two ways about it. The defense, from what I saw, D- to F in terms of their effort level throughout the entire game against Los Angeles. Jamie Collins looks like he doesn't want to be here anymore. I don't know how else to say that. Jamie Collins looked like he was just going through the motions, collecting his paycheck, like many veterans we've seen throughout the years on this squad, many well-paid veterans specifically. He looks like he doesn't want to be here. Some of the secondary, with the exception of Denzel Ward, looked like they did not want to play anymore against Old Man Rivers and the Los Angeles Chargers. And, the pass rush, once it got sort of out of hand, they didn't exactly have their peak effort either. I'm not faulting Myles Garrett by any stretch of the imagination. I think he's still one of the absolute best players in the league. But what we saw on defense was terrible. No two ways about it. And the offense wasn't much better. Baker Mayfield threw a couple of interceptions. I can't fault him for both of those. Certainly one was his fault, though. And he had, I don't know how many balls went right through the receiver's hands, but from what I can tell, the Browns are trying to shatter the record for most dropped passes. They look to improve upon that dubious mark this week by signing Braylon Edwards' clone, Brashard Perriman, he at one point played for the Ravens. We'll get to him potentially here in a little bit on our fantasy segment, but we had to get that off of our chest here on the I Still Believe in Cleveland podcast. It was ugly. No two ways about it. And, I think we will see the team that we saw hopefully the first 5 weeks. And I don't mean they're going to win because they only won 2 of those weeks, right? But I think the effort will be better. I don't expect the defense to go through the motions again. I don't believe Greg Williams will allow that. I have to believe that because this team looked like they had turned the corner finally. And I hope what we saw last week was the last, dying gasp of the zombie same old Browns. So that's off our chest. We're going to bury that game footage. We won't come back to it again. It's on to Tampa Bay. We do have some interesting options, and this is the reason that I think this team is different. I'm just going through the list of guys, and I came up with 5 players that you can start for the Cleveland Browns. And, long-term Browns fans know that you can look back for most of this decade and not find 5 players you could start. And we have 5 of them on this team that you can start this week. So let's go through that. We'll start with our number 1 option, and that's David Njoku. I think this guy's a must start at the tight end position. Unless you have one of the top 3 guys, Gronk, Kelsey, or Zach Ertz, you have to start David Njoku. Tampa Bay, they give up the most points to the tight end position, and we saw it last week. Baker is starting more and more to trust David Njoku, mostly because the other receivers can't catch a cold outside of Jarvis Landry, but Njoku is a mismatch. You know, he can high point the football, and he proved to be a red zone favorite of Baker Mayfield last week. I expect that to continue. I fully expect David Njoku to find the end zone at least once against this Tampa Bay team that has had a very difficult time defending this position. So he's my number one play for the Browns this week. Number two, I'm going to go with Carlos Hyde, mostly because you're not going to find a running back on the waiver wire that averages 19 carries a game. You're just not. You're not going to bench a running back that averages 19 carries per game. And, you know, the yards per carry hasn't been as high as we would like, but I fully expect Carlos Hyde to get between 15 and 20 carries against Tampa Bay. I expect him to average over 4 yards per rush. So just some back of the envelope math, you know, I'm looking at hopefully 80 yards rushing, and he'll probably throw in at least one reception for some yards. So he's definitely in the play for RB2 or potentially flex, depending on your running back situation. But I would not bench Carlos Hyde. Tampa Bay is a little better against the run, but they still give up the 8th most points to the running back. I will say this before I go any further about Tampa Bay. They did fire their defensive coordinator. This is a move that probably had to happen because they were on pace to break records for some of the worst defensive play that anyone has seen. This is a team that couldn't cover, couldn't stop, couldn't tackle, and didn't seem to have much desire to do any of those things either. So we might see a team that tries something different. So I'm expecting them to be a little better, mostly because I don't think they can be much worse. But this is still no reason to fear this defense. This is not a good defense from a personnel perspective. Okay, let's continue on with the Browns here. My number 3 play is Jarvis Landry. He burned us last week. You know, I liked Jarvis Landry a lot. Los Angeles struggles, and you know, if you throw out the Browns game, they are very bad against covering good wide receivers. This is a team in desperate need of a CB1. Jarvis Landry got 9 targets and he had 2 receptions. This is not something I expect to see again out of a borderline elite talent at the wide receiver position and a very good young quarterback in Baker Mayfield. I expect them to be better. I expect them to be on the same page. So I'm not going to bench Jarvis Landry based on one bad week. If this trend continues, we will revisit it, but I would still have Jarvis Landry in my starting lineup, certainly. After that, a bit of a drop to my number 4 and number 5 plays. Number 4, I'm going to go with Duke Johnson. He did have 18 PPR points last week against Los Angeles in a game that was a blowout. Now, that was a negative script sort of a game. You know, the Browns were way behind, so they were passing a little more, so he got some more targets. But, you know, Duke Johnson averages 9 yards per carry. Granted, this is on low volume. He only averages about 3 carries a game, but, you know, that's still 25 yards rushing. I think he'll add probably, you know, 5 or 6 targets, probably 4 or 5 receptions, and he's probably going to be good for somewhere between 30 and 50 yards. So, you know, if you're looking for running back help like most people are, you can put him in at your number 2 running back spot, especially if you're in a PPR league. The last play for the Browns, I'm gonna start Baker Mayfield this week. You're obviously not going to start him if you have some of the top quarterback options, but if you don't, this is a Tampa Bay team that thus far has given up, hands down, the most points to the quarterback position. Every quarterback that they have faced has thrown for at least 330 yards against them. They can't cover, plain and simple. Now, again, new defensive coordinator, they might try something different. They might be able to confuse the rookie. They're certainly going to try to replicate the game plan they saw from Los Angeles, where they tried to maintain sort of integrity in their rush lanes to prevent Baker from extending the play and getting outside the pocket and scrambling. But Baker Mayfield can beat you from within the pocket just as easily as he can beat you outside of it. This is an accurate quarterback that goes through his progressions well. So, I don't anticipate that strategy that we saw from Los Angeles working, mostly because I don't think Tampa Bay has the personnel to pull it off. We shall see, but I like Baker in this matchup, especially if you're streaming the quarterback position. That's going to do it for the fantasy segment. Again, I hope that we do not have to talk ever again about the same old Browns. I expect better this week. I think we will get better, and I'm expecting to have some positive things to discuss on the offensive side of the ball next week. So go Browns. Thank you for joining the I Still Believe in Cleveland podcast, and we'll talk to you next week.
Thanks again to Eric and Drew for the knowledge. Check out my Twitter account @Spony, that's SPONY, and you'll see a pinned tweet with how to subscribe to the podcast and Eric and Drew's Twitter accounts. We'd love to hear your positive reviews on iTunes or the Apple Podcasts app to help us grow. If you've got something constructive or even negative, just DM me on Twitter. That's @Spony. Thanks to a number of YouTube channels for the Sam Dekker story. I've included links to all of those clips and associated links within the show notes on istillbelieveincleveland.com. The I Still Believe in Cleveland podcast is released every Wednesday night wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and we will talk to you again next week.